Hey guys, welcome back. It's Missy, and today we're going to be talking about the fawn response. So often on this channel we talk about our nervous system and our fight, flight, and freeze, and I've occasionally mentioned the fawn response, but we haven't talked in depth. So today we're going to talk about what the fawn response is and what it has to do with complex trauma. So we are hardwired to attach to our caregivers, and our caregivers are supposed to be the one that are supposed to keep us safe, make us feel protected, and make us feel secure. But if you have a narcissistic parent, you have a borderline parent, or you have an incredibly immature parent, they are the same person, the person that you're supposed to attach to, that makes you feel in danger, and they're the same person that harms you. So there's a part of you that needs and wants them, and then there's another part that causes you to feel in danger when you're around them. So when we feel we're in danger, there's an innate response where our nervous system kicks in and it causes us to want to fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. And so let's go into the different examples. So let's say when you were a child, you were really craving your parents' attention and you were really needing some love and nurturing. And at that moment, both your parents were fighting, and when you went to go get that nurture and that care, they yelled at you. They told you to go to your room. So you immediately feel in danger because you're not able to have a need met, and you don't know how to communicate things, and you're also this helpless child and you don't know how to meet your own needs. So because you feel in that danger, your body will go into one of those four responses. So if a child that goes into a fight response, they will get very angry, they will start screaming at the parent, maybe they'll throw a tantrum. If the child goes into that freeze response, that's when the child will withdraw. They may stand still and not move. Maybe they'll blankly stare. They go into that freeze response where they stop all functions. If they go into a flight response, they will want to run from that situation. They will go and maybe run away from home. They'll threaten to run away from home. And usually when you feel those things, when you feel, going back to the fight response, you'll feel it in your upper body. So maybe you'll feel heat going over you. You'll feel your face getting flushed. You'll feel your fists going into a clench. You'll feel it in your upper body. Your stomach will get sick. When you have that flight response, you'll feel it in your lower body. You'll feel this urge to run away. You will get like an adrenaline rush. Well, you get an adrenaline rush in both of them, but the way that you'll feel you need to use the adrenaline is by getting the heck out of there. And then when you go into a freeze response, you will literally feel like you can't move, like just something has come over you, and you can feel like your heart beating really fast, or you could feel a rush of anxiety over you, but you feel like you can't vocalize, you can't move. Now, let's talk about the fawn response. A fawn response is a combination of all of them, but because that child has been shamed or feared to not express any of these emotions, or they had gotten this impression that they're not allowed, maybe subtly they receive these cues by being ignored or whatever it is, instead of expressing themselves and keeping them out of danger through fight, flight, or freeze, they will then disconnect themselves and go into a fawn response, which is where they will overly please, help, fix, take care of the other person. So basically what happens, in order to cope and keep them safe, they split and they disassociate from all of their natural emotions, and they then attend to their parent or their caregiver by being loving, by being caring. So basically, as a child, if you go into a fawn response, you felt threatened, but because you didn't feel like you could run or fight or freeze in those situations, you will please, appease, and de-escalate the situation. You start to people please to avoid conflict. It's an avoidant tactic, and this is a way to avoid any more abuse. By trying to fix whatever is making them upset, you go into problem-solving mode. Also, part of being in the fawn response, it helps you to avoid intimacy. So, intimacy or affection can feel dangerous when you have these abusive parents. And so you try to avoid all of that by you always thinking about the other person and caring for the other person. That can put a wall up between you guys, so that way you're able to protect yourself and you're able to just keep it about the other person. It protects you from getting hurt and being vulnerable. So if you dealt with abandonment, neglect, or lack of emotional safety or even physical safety, you have to find a way to have your needs met. And so you may have learned, okay, the only way I can have my needs met is when I do show that care and I rid myself and I take care of my caregiver or my parent. So this teaches you that you need others to be good in order for you to be good. This also teaches you as a child to stifle your anger. So that fight response that happens, or when you express that anger, you feel that anger, that happens when you feel like you're being treated unfairly. When you go into a fawn response, you're suppressing that feeling, that anger, that you're being mistreated, and that's why oftentimes maybe you will be mistreated, and often maybe you'll see someone else start to get angry and start to yell or start to be assertive and communicate that that's an issue. If you go naturally into a fawn response, you'll be like, well, why can't I do that? I know that's what makes sense. Why can't I do that? And that's because you've stifled and suppressed that anger, and that anger doesn't naturally come out because you felt in danger. Your nervous system has been trained to feel, okay, if I go into a fight response, I can be in danger and not have my needs met, and then I will face abandonment or rejection, or I will be in danger in some sort of way. So you notice you'll have certain triggers where you'll go into a fawn response. That's if you have upset someone, or if there's maybe some sort of conflict, you may do it on a natural basis where you're always trying to avoid conflict and you're trying to appease another person. You'll make sure they're always good and making sure not to rock the boat, and you're very careful because you don't know how to deal with situations, and you are so terrified of making them feel uncomfortable because you were taught, okay, I can never make my parent unhappy in any sort of way, or I'm solely responsible for my caregiver, my parent, so I'm always responsible for everyone's feelings, so I always have to micromanage and make sure that I don't upset anyone or do anything to cause a conflict, so that way I'm not in danger. So that's why you often see yourself overly sacrificing yourself, and you have learned how to mood read, mind read, and you will revolve your life around others and how they're feeling, especially maybe with your partners or people that are very close to you, or maybe authority figures, because you felt like you had to do that in your childhood. You felt like you had to mind read and mood read and revolve everything around your caregiver in order to protect yourself from any type of abuse. So what happens is you will feel, as a child and as you get older, you will feel a complete disconnect from yourself. You will feel disconnected from your emotions, you're unsure of your emotions, and you may be unaware of your emotions. So you may know you're uncomfortable, but you can't put a name to the uncomfortable emotion or sensation unless you learn the different words of what different emotions are, and you learn that you're allowed to have these emotions because you were suppressed and made to feel that you weren't allowed to have these emotions. You disconnecting from yourself and your emotions has become a coping skill. So because this has become a coping skill, and pretty much you maybe have noticed your whole life is revolved around coping, you then have a really hard time loving yourself. You don't really know who you are. You don't know who your authentic self is. You've lost yourself to always appeasing everyone and pleasing everyone. You are unsure of yourself, and you're unsure of your decisions, and you have a lot of self-doubt, and it's really hard to connect to others because you are so disconnected with yourself, and you're always thinking about what the other person needs and how you can attend to them. So I talked about an example of fawning in childhood, but let's talk about a fawn response you may go into when you're an adult. So let's say your partner had asked you to wash the dishes, and you had said, oh yeah, I'll do it, and then you forget, and you actually, there was a hole in the wall and you started fixing it, and that was stressing you out and you were worried about that hole. And then they come to you and they say, I thought you said you were gonna do the dishes, and they start yelling at you. Instead of you explaining yourself and saying, hey, I know maybe I messed up, I said I'll do the dishes, but this whole, I decided I was gonna take care of it. Instead of that, you'll immediately go into, oh, I'm sorry, I'll take care of it right away. I didn't mean to upset you. What can I do to make it better? You'll go into that response. So rather than you thinking about yourself and how this is affecting you, you immediately go into that fawn response of, oh no, I'm in danger, something negative can happen, they're gonna abandon me, or I'm in trouble, I'm being punished right now. And so that's how you may respond to conflict in a fawn response. Or if you are someone that's constantly in a fawn response, you will always try to avoid upsetting anyone, so you will avoid attending to yourself or taking care of yourself, and you'll make sure everyone else is good before you do anything for yourself. And if you do something for yourself, you may feel immediately guilt and shame and like you're doing something wrong, because that's how your parents have made you feel. They had to inflict shame and guilt on you when you did do something for yourself, or if you did something for yourself before making your parent feel good or doing exactly what they had wanted. So now that we understand the fawn response, how do you heal from this fawn response, or how do you get out of this trauma fawn response? So you can understand all of this, you know, we can have these conversations, you can understand all of it, but it's not as simple of understanding. You can logically be there. It's something that you have to unlearn, and you have to rewire your brain. It's hardwired in your nervous system, so you're hardwired to have these beliefs, and you are conditioned to behave this way. And it's been a survival tactic. You've been in survival, so your brain is hardwired. Like when you're triggered, or when there's potential of you being abandoned or punished or whatever it is, you will always go into that fawn response. You will be terrified. So we can have these conversations, but when it comes, and you could understand it, but when it comes down to it and you're triggered, you will immediately go back to that fawn response, because you're not healing and rewiring your brain and that conditioned response. So the first thing is the educational aspect, is understanding how all of this impacts you. And so having that education, understanding what a fawn response is, being aware of the sensations in your body when you know you're going to go into fawn response. So when you go into that please, you may go into like a desperate mode. You may feel a flush all over your body. Recognize those sensations when you do go into that fawn response, and be like, okay, this is a fawn response. Take a few deep breaths to help you to re-regulate yourself and get out of your nervous system response, that trauma response, so you can go into more of that parasympathetic nervous system, more of the calming rest and digest response, and thinking about, okay, how do I feel about this situation? You can always take a moment to get out of the situation, say, hey, I need a minute, you know, go to the bathroom, whatever it is. Say, okay, you know, how do I feel about this situation? How would an assertive person deal with this situation? Because that way you can deal, okay, what does it look like to stand up for yourself? And you practicing doing that, and you letting go of, you know, whatever their response is, because there's nothing wrong with you standing up for yourself. The next thing is for you to understand it is not your job to take care of everyone else and their feelings. They are going to have their feelings, and that's okay. You are not responsible for other people's feelings. Even if you did something wrong, you still are not responsible for their feelings. You're responsible for taking accountability, but you are not responsible to make them feel better. You can own up and make amends, but no matter what their feelings are, that is not your responsibility. And so you letting go of that, and you talking to your inner child saying, you know, it never was my responsibility as a child to take care of my parents' feelings, and that was unfair of them to do that to me. They were too immature to handle their own emotions. That's not my fault. And you letting go of that, and you releasing that from your child self, and you allowing adult self to let go of that, can help you, so that way you let go of needing to appease everyone and take care of their emotions. The other thing that comes with it is boundaries. Being okay, not only letting go of the responsibility, but being okay with other people being uncomfortable. This is something I talk about a lot, is other people are going to get upset and be angry, and it's not your responsibility to fix it. You have to allow them to be upset and angry. It's okay if they're upset and angry. They'll go through their cycles of emotions. You have to remember, you're not that helpless child where you need other people to be okay in order for you to be okay. They're not going to be okay, and just let them go through it. You have to learn how to tolerate these feelings. Be okay with them being upset. This is part of us avoiding our own vulnerability. And because like we had to let go of, you know, we had to disconnect. That's very vulnerable to be connected with ourselves and reveal our feelings. We have to be okay with our own vulnerabilities and be okay with our own emotions and deal with our own uncomfortable feelings. And when we do that, we'll be able to allow other people to have their feelings. So set those boundaries when it comes to feelings. Okay, I'm uncomfortable. It's okay for me to be uncomfortable. They're uncomfortable. It's okay for them to be uncomfortable. I don't have to fix it. So that's part of the boundaries. And the other part is you understanding, this is something I always talk about, is, you know, what are you okay with? What are you not okay with? And what do you accept? And how do you want to to be treated. That's really important for you to enforce those boundaries, not only to put it out there, but to enforce it as well. So when you determine, okay, I don't like when someone touches my stuff, or I don't like when someone disrespects my opinions, you know, you saying that, saying, okay, this is how I want to be treated. I want someone to be able to, you know, maybe they don't have to agree with me with my opinions, but they should at least not disrespect them and put them down. So I expect them to either not have conversations with me if they are going to disrespect me, or I'm going to, you know, I want them to be able to have a good conversation where they're bringing something to the table. And if they're not, then I'm not going to talk to them. And you enforce that. So if someone disrespects your opinions, you say, okay, I don't feel like this conversation is going anywhere. I'm not going to have this conversation. Or someone touches your stuff and you don't like it. Hey, you know, you're disrespecting my stuff. I'm not going to lend it to you anymore. And you enforcing that. The other thing you will need is to have your own sense of self, because you weren't made to feel like you can have a sense of self. So you identifying who you are, you can start with figuring out what are things that I don't like, because sometimes it's really hard to figure out who you are and what you like and what you need. Figure out what you don't need and what you don't like, and then naturally it'll be the opposite of what that is. So you giving yourself that permission, hey, I'm allowed to have my own sense of self, and then you breaking that enmeshment and be like, okay, you know, my family is their own people, and I'm gonna, you know, do my own thing, and I don't have to be the same as them. It's not shameful, it's not bad. I'm just gonna be me, and that's okay. The other thing is to lessen that self-critic. That's really important, because you will take things very personally, or you will always feel like you're wrong or you're bad or you did something wrong. And so you being aware of those constant negative stories and you challenging those stories. You know, I talk about with false guilt, asking yourself, do I really feel like I'm doing something wrong, or am I worried about how the other person's feeling? If you're always worried about how the other person's feeling, then you're not doing anything wrong. That's that false guilt. And so you being able to identify that and reminding yourself, you know, right and wrong is subjective. I don't feel that I'm doing anything wrong. It's okay for me to say no. It's okay for me to make people upset sometimes. It's okay for me to make mistakes and be wrong. And you challenging that negative self-critic will help you, so you're not always going into those stories and living off of your guilt, or living off of feeling like you need to always please and attend to other people, and being okay with making other people upset. And this is part of changing those beliefs. We always talk about changing your beliefs is through repetition and emotion. And, you know, part of it is action-based, but also it has to do with what we tell ourselves. So be very aware of the things that you tell yourself. And then the last thing is grieving. It's so important. I have talked a lot about grieving. It's being able to grieve over your childhood, and that you were parentified and you had parents that didn't attend to you and your needs, and allowing yourself to feel sad for yourself and being compassionate towards yourself. That's really important as part of the grieving. It's really important as part of the healing process. So what do you guys think? Leave it on the comments below, and please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share with someone that you think may need it. Until next time, thanks for watching. Bye guys. This hair be getting long. I don't know if I should cut it. You need to cut it. My hair is literally like in my armpit. It looks like like my armpit hair. Like if I need like a long hair like this. Got a little armpit hair. Girl, you need to shave your armpits. It's got a little curl at the end. Your armpit hair styling. Come here, mama. What's wrong? Come here. Come here. You're lost? Which I talk about boundaries in my 11 weeks to break free from the past. If you would like to check it out, link is down below.